The gray walls of the prison building loomed over Angela Gibbs as she walked across the courtyard to the maximum security unit. The February wind chilled her to the bone, making her wrap herself more tightly in her uniform jacket. After 5 years of service in the general ward, she'd been transferred to a new place, one that housed the most dangerous criminals. The heavy metal door slammed shut behind her. Warden Warren Page, a tall, gray-haired man with a military bearing, led her down a long corridor lit by dim lamps. Strict regimen has its own rules, Gibbs. No amateurishness, no indulgences. Everyone here is a potential threat. His voice echoed off the walls. Angela nodded silently, absorbing the new reality. The cells on both sides of the corridor, the bars, the smells of chlorine and unfreedom. The inmates saw her off with wary glances. A new guard is always an event. Your shift is from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. Post on the 3rd tier, cell block C. The shift supervisor is Mitchell. He'll fill you in. Page handed her a bunch of keys and an electronic pass. The 3rd tier greeted her with silence. Here the cells were solitary, a luxury bestowed on those who behaved well. Angela walked slowly along the row, getting used to her new place. From cell number 312 came a soft singing, someone humming Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Intrigued, she peered through the observation window. A tall man was sitting on a bunk, leaning over a book. When he heard footsteps, he looked up, and Angela met the most piercing gaze of her life. Bright, almost transparent eyes looked calm and studying. "Good morning, miss," he said, his voice matching his appearance, soft with a slight accent. "Glad to welcome a new face to our haven." She nodded, noting the prisoner's unusual manner of speech. The impeccably ironed prison robe, the neatly made bunk, the stack of books on the desk. Everything gave him away as a man who retained his dignity even here. "Prisoner number?" she asked, trying to hide her interest behind professional austerity. 24785. Nicola Becker. He bowed his head slightly, as if he were introducing himself at a social occasion. All day, Angela had been getting used to her new duty station. Block C was relatively quiet, with long-serving prisoners who had already accepted their fate. The shift supervisor, Mitchell, a stocky man with a red face, showed her around, introduced her to the security system, told her the routine. By evening, she felt exhausted, not so much physically as emotionally. The new reality was pressing, making her wary every second. Leaving the cell block, she passed cell 312 again. Nicola Becker was still reading, but now at the window, catching the last rays of the February sun. At home, lying in bed, Angela remembered that gaze, calm, studying, not at all like the hunted or aggressive gazes of the other prisoners. There was intelligence in it, some inner strength. What had put such a man behind bars? That question kept her awake until the morning. The staff room was quiet. Angela flipped through the pages of the personal file of prisoner number 24785. The photograph on the first page was of Nicola Becker in an austere suit, clearly taken before his incarceration. The same piercing gaze, but a different facial expression, confident, even arrogant. Education, Yale University, Department of Economics. 6 years at a major investment firm. Impeccable career, letters of recommendation. And then an armed bank robbery, the murder of a security guard. Angela read the dry lines of the protocol. Shot in the chest. Death was instantaneous. Studying our intellectual? The voice of Judy Brooks, the prison psychologist, made her wince. Interesting case. Went broke after the stock market crash. Lost everything, went into debt to dangerous people. Classic fall story. He doesn't look like a killer. Angela closed the file. What's a killer supposed to look like? Judy took a seat next to her. The worst crimes are often committed by those you least expect it from. The usual morning bustle reigned in cell block C, breakfast delivery, cell checks, guard shifts. Passing cell 312, Angela slowed her step. Nicola stood by a wall on which a remarkably accurate portrait of a young woman had been drawn in pencil. "Your work?" She paused. "Yes, my wife, ex-wife." He ran his hand over the drawing. Drawing helps you keep the details in mind. The facial features, the curve of the lips, the look, all fade from memory over time. You draw beautifully." "Thank you. Went to art school before finances got tight," he smiled. "You should have seen the Impressionists at the Orsay. Monet, Renoir, Degas, that's where the real art is." "Been to Paris?" "3 times. The last time was 6 months before—" He paused. "I'm sorry, Miss Gibbs, I don't want to abuse your time." She should have walked away. She should have kept her distance. But something kept her in front of the camera. "What are you reading now?" "Camus, The Outsider." Surprisingly in tune with my situation, he picked up a book from the table. A man commits murder and can't explain why. Society judges him not so much for the crime as for his inability to play by the rules, to show the right emotions. Angela felt a chill run down her spine. He was talking about the murder as calmly as if he were discussing the weather. There was no remorse or fear in his voice, just thoughtfulness. "Do you like Camus?" he asked. Haven't read it. I can borrow it when I finish it. There aren't many connoisseurs of good literature here." That evening, checking the cells before lights out, she lingered again at 312. Nicola was asleep, the book resting on his chest. In his sleep, his face seemed almost serene. Angela watched him and thought about the man he had shot, also someone's husband, son, father. How to reconcile that fact with an intelligent man talking about art and literature. The prison library was located in the semi-basement of Cell Block C. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, prisoners were allowed to spend an hour there under the supervision of guards. Angela had volunteered to be on duty in the library. It provided a distraction from the monotony of the corridors. On this Thursday, Nicola was the only visitor. He moved slowly along the shelves, his fingers sliding along the spines of books. Angela watched him from her seat by the door. "Have you read Hemingway, Miss Gibbs?" He pulled out a shabby volume. "You know, I met his grandson in Paris. It was an amazing coincidence that we ended up in the same bar in Montmartre." "Really?" "Yes. He was talking about his grandfather, a very different image from the one everyone knows. You know, I was thinking at the time, how amazing life is, sitting in a Paris bar, drinking wine with the grandson of a great writer." Nicola fell silent, clutching the book. "And then 6 months later you're standing with a gun in a bank, and everything goes to hell." Angela tensed. They weren't allowed to discuss crime with prisoners. But Nicola continued, looking somewhere through the bookshelves. "I didn't mean to kill anyone. I thought I'd just scare them, take the money, pay off my debts." The guard reached for his gun. I fired on reflex. He went down somehow, casual, just slumped to the floor. I still remember the look in his eyes, surprised like that. "You shouldn't talk about that." "I know, but I have to tell someone. I've been carrying it around for 3 years. I see his face every night. He has 2 children left, I've recognized. I've ruined more than one life, dozens of lives. And for what? For money?" There was such genuine pain in his voice that Angela involuntarily stepped closer. It was a mistake. In the library, they should keep their distance. Nicola looked up. There were tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have told you that." "It's okay." She wanted to add something else, but faltered. The next Tuesday they discussed Hemingway, then Fitzgerald. Talking about literature seemed like safe territory, but each time the line between prisoner and guard grew thinner. Judy Brooks was the first to notice the change. She ran into Angela in the staff mess hall. "How's the high security service treating you?" the psychologist asked, stirring her coffee. "It's fine. Calmer than I expected. I've seen you on duty in the library a lot. Interesting choice for a security guard." "I love books," Angela shrugged. "And conversations about them?" Judy looked at her carefully. "Especially with some of the prisoners?" "I don't know what you mean." "Get it right, Angela. The important thing to remember here is who's who. Sympathy is fine, but you can't forget where the line is drawn." "I remember my responsibilities." Angela stood up from the table. "I hope so," Judy said quietly after her. That evening in the library, Nicola read aloud The Old Man and the Sea. His voice, soft and deep, filled the space between the shelves. Angela listened with her eyes closed. It seemed to her that they were somewhere far away from here, in a Parisian cafe, in a New York gallery, anywhere but the prison library. The springtime in the prison was particularly acute, the sunlight streaming through the barred windows, making the captivity feel more acute. Angela now spent almost all her shifts in the library. The other guards were glad. Few liked this boring duty. She and Nicola had created a ritual of their own. He read her favorite passages from books. She brought art magazines from the city library. Sometimes their fingers would touch when he handed her a book, and that touch burned. That afternoon, Nicola talked about his trip to Venice. Angela listened, leaning against the shelving unit, forgetting to keep her distance. You know what the most beautiful thing about Venice is? The air. It's soaked with history and art. Every breath is like a sip of eternity. He spoke softly, almost a whisper, looking into her eyes. You would fall in love with this city. The switch to you happened imperceptibly. Angela realized she couldn't remember when it happened. I've never been to Europe. She lowered her eyes. We could go together. Someday. His hand touched her wrist. She had to pull away. Should have been reminded of the rules. Instead, she froze, feeling the warmth of his fingers. We're not allowed to. Not allowed to what? Dream? Feel? He took a step closer. You feel what I feel. Their first kiss happened right there, between the dusty shelving units. Angela didn't remember who reached out first. Everything merged into a maelstrom of sensations. His lips, his hands, his whispers, reality ceased to exist. That evening, she stood under the shower, trying to wash away the guilt. What was she doing? How could she have let this happen? But the next morning, she would walk to the library again, knowing he would be waiting. The notes began, little scraps of paper that she'd sneak out. Nicola wrote her poems, drew little sketches. She wrote back, tentatively at first, then more and more openly. Angela began to forge the library's visit log, writing in other inmates instead of Nicola. She began to ignore when he stayed longer than the allotted hour, brought him books that were forbidden by prison rules. One day she caught him talking to another inmate in the hallway. What was that about? She asked later in the library. Nothing much, just an exchange of pleasantries. He smiled. You know how important it is to maintain relationships here. You're not allowed to talk to prisoners from other units. You're breaking the rules too. His voice grew harsher. Or is it different for you? She remained silent. He was right. She had long ago overstepped every possible boundary. I'm sorry, he hugged her. I didn't mean to upset you. It's just so hard here sometimes. You're the only thing keeping me afloat. Angela melted at those words. She didn't notice how gradually Nicola began to manipulate her. Little things at first. Changing a journal entry, bringing a note to another prisoner, accidentally, leaving the door of the staff room open. If you love me, you'll help me, he would say. It's such little things, nothing serious. Judy Brooks tried to talk to her again. Angela, I see what's happening. You're changing, becoming distracted, breaking protocol. It's a dangerous path. You don't understand anything. I do, more than you realize. He has a knack for making people fall in love with him. It's his defense mechanism, his way of surviving here. You're wrong. There's nothing between us. Then why are you blushing? Why are you protecting him? Angela ran out of the counselor's office. She didn't want to hear the truth. She didn't want to think about Nicola being able to use her. Nights she lay awake, rereading his notes. My soul yearns for you like a moth to a flame, he wrote. You give me hope in this realm of shadows. Beautiful words that made her dizzy. And by day, she caught his glances through the bars, kissed him secretly in the library, risked her career and her freedom for a few minutes of intimacy. Her whole world had narrowed down to those encounters, to his touch, to his voice. She hadn't noticed how the other guards had begun to avoid her, how her superiors had begun to look more closely, didn't see the worry in Judy's eyes. Her existence was split in two, the gray reality and the vivid, passion-filled moments with him. I'm going crazy, she whispered, snuggling against him in the tight space between the shelving units. We're both going crazy, he replied, kissing her neck. But isn't it a beautiful madness? Warden Warren Page's office was stuffy. Nicola Becker sat across the massive desk, keeping outwardly calm, but his fingers twitched faintly. "The application for parole is denied," Page spoke in an even voice, looking down at the papers. "The board has deemed that given the severity of the offense." Nicola stopped listening. 3 years of good behavior, working at the library, participating in prison rehabilitation programs, all for nothing. He would stay here for another 9 years. At the library, Angela noticed the change in his mood immediately. What happened? Rejected. He tossed the book back on the shelf. "You know what the funny thing is? I actually believed the system worked. That good behavior meant something." "I'm sorry." She tried to touch his arm, but he pulled away. "Sorry? You're sorry?" His voice became hard. "You know what I'm sorry about? That I'm wasting my time playing these games with you." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you could help me. Really help me, not carry books and notes." "Nicola, I have a phone and pictures of our meetings and all our correspondence." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "What do you think Paige will say when she sees these pictures? When she reads your declarations of love to the prisoner?" Angela felt the ground go from under her feet. "You won't do that." "Why not? I have nothing to lose. But you—" He smiled. "How much do you get for associating with a prisoner? For carrying prohibited items? For forging documents?" "I loved you." "Love?" He laughed. "You were a convenient tool. You think you're special? The first guard to lose her head to a prisoner?" The next 3 days passed like a blur. Nicola demanded help in organizing the escape. He had thought of everything: who to bribe, what doors to open, when to act. Angela listened to his plan, feeling everything freezing inside. The prison laundry room was always damp and noisy. The rumble of the washing machines drowned out all sound. Angela knew the schedule. On Wednesdays, Nicola worked here alone. She walked in as he was folding clean sheets. "I'll take it," she said. "I'll help you run." He turned to her, a familiar cocky smile on his face. "I knew you'd make the right decision." The heavy wrench lay on the tool shelf. Angela saw it every day as she surveyed the room. The blow hit him in the temple. Nicola didn't even realize what was happening. He collapsed between the washing machines, blood gushing from the wound. The second blow was unnecessary, but she couldn't stop. A third, fourth, 5. The sound of wet blows mingled with the noise of the machines. Angela was methodical. Wiped the key, put it back. Checked the security cameras. There were none in the laundry room, only in the hallway. She knew they were rarely checked at this hour. In cell block D sat Ray Harris, known for his aggressiveness. 2 days ago, he'd had an altercation with Nicola in the cafeteria. Angela falsified the laundry log, putting Harris in it. Body was discovered an hour later. Screaming, commotion, sirens blaring. Angela stood in the cordon with the other guards, watching the medics cover the body with a black bag. There wasn't a speck of blood on her uniform. "How awful," she said to Judy Brooks. "He was such a quiet prisoner." Judy looked at her with a long stare but said nothing. In the evening, Angela burned all the notes from Nicola. In the ashes, she saw a scrap of the last one. "You give me hope in this realm of shadows." A bitter laugh came to her throat. The next day, Detective Arnold Farmer of the Major Crimes Unit came to the prison. Angela saw him talking to Paige, studying the crime scene. It seemed to her that every glance he gave her was directed at her. But she'd thought of everything. There was no trace. Harris had motive. Journal entries confirmed his presence in the laundry room. The perfect crime. Detective Arnold Farmer surveyed the prison laundry room, making notes in his notebook. His bulky figure seemed out of place among the washing machines and baskets of laundry. Nearby, Warren Page, the warden, was shuffling from foot to foot. So the guard on duty found the body? Yes, Michael Stevens. He was doing his routine rounds at 14:30. Farmer squatted down, examining the dark stain on the concrete floor. Did they find the murder weapon? Wrench, lying where it belonged on the tool shelf. There's blood all over it. In its place? Farmer raised an eyebrow. That's odd. Usually killers don't bother cleaning up. He walked slowly around the room, stopping at each car. Something was bothering him, but he couldn't yet figure out what it was. Tell me about the suspect. Ray Harris, serving life for a double murder. Aggressive, has had run-ins with other inmates. Confronted the victim in the mess hall 2 days ago. What was it about? The usual prison nonsense, a line for food, a rude word. Farmer pulled out a photo of Nicola Becker. What can you tell me about the victim? Model inmate, worked at the library, participated in a rehabilitation program, no serious offenses in 3 years. Then why would such a quiet inmate provoke a conflict with the prison's most dangerous resident? Page shrugged. Stuff happens in prison. Farmer spent the next 2 days interviewing witnesses. The guards were reluctant to talk, the inmates even less so. No one saw anything, heard anything, knew anything. How long have you been working with Becker at the library? He asked Angela Gibbs. About 6 months. I was usually on duty there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. What kind of impression did he make? Calm, polite, read a lot, never caused any trouble. Farmer noted the way she was rubbing the sleeve of her uniform. Nervous, or just upset by the death of a familiar prisoner. That evening, he was rereading the statement when prison psychologist Judy Brooks knocked on the office door. Detective, do you have a minute? Sure, have a seat. I've been going over the notes from my interviews with Nicola. In the week before his death, his behavior changed. He became irritable, aggressive. What's that about? He was denied parole, but... She faltered. But... There was something else. It was like he was preparing for something. Just couldn't figure out what. Farmer made a note in his notebook. The picture wasn't adding up. A quiet prisoner suddenly erupts into conflict. The killer carefully returns the crime weapon to its place. Strange changes in the victim's behavior. He pulled the laundry log. The entry for Harris's presence there looked spotless. Too spotless. Prison always smells the same. Chlorine and hopelessness. Detective Arnold Farmer knew that smell all too well. He'd seen plenty of prison murders in his 20 years of service. I want to see the security tapes, he demanded of the warden first thing in the morning. Warren Page became visibly nervous, rubbing the knot of his tie. You see, we've had some technical problems. 2 days ago, the drives flew. The cameras are only working in real time. 2 days ago? Farmer raised an eyebrow. And when do you expect repairs? The specialist promised to be here next week. The detective made a note in his notebook. Too good a coincidence. The interrogation room greeted him with the creak of an iron chair. Ray Harris, the prime suspect, towered over the table like a rock, massive, tattooed, with a hard look in his eyes. Where were you yesterday between 14:00 and 14:30? In my cell. The laundry log says otherwise. I don't give a damn about the log. I was in my cell. Harris crossed his arms over his chest. Ask the guards. Ask the other inmates. There was absolute certainty in his voice. Not the fear of exposure, not the anger of a cornered animal. A simple statement of fact. Farmer spent the next hours interviewing witnesses. The guards answered sparingly, matter-of-factly. Prisoners hid their eyes and mumbled that they had seen nothing. Any change in the victim's behavior? He asked prison psychologist Judy Brooks. In the week before his death, he became irritable. He was denied parole. Farmer went back to the visitation log again and again. The entry for Harris's presence in the laundry room looked perfect. Too perfect. Who keeps the log? He asked Page. The guards on duty. Stevens and Gibbs were there that day. The detective tapped his pencil on the desk thoughtfully. The cameras had successfully malfunctioned. The prime suspect confidently denying his presence at the crime scene. A perfect log entry. Someone went to great lengths to misdirect the investigation. Someone with access to the visitor's log. Someone in security. A fine fall rain was drizzling as Detective Arnold Farmer parked his car outside the police records building. A prison murder investigation had stalled, so he decided to dig deeper into the victim's past. Nicola Becker's story lay before him in the yellowed folders of an old case file. Crime scene photos, interview transcripts, witness statements, a successful stockbroker whose life had gone downhill after the stock market crash, debt, threats, desperation, and then a bank robbery and the death of a security guard. Farmer scrutinized Nicola's photographs from that time. Expensive suit, confident smile, arrogant look. Not at all like a man capable of murder. But those were often the most dangerous, the ones you didn't expect to get hit. The trial testimony wasn't particularly interesting. Becker didn't back down, admitted guilt. He talked about remorse, about not wanting to kill. The jury wept, but the judge was adamant. 12 years of strict regime. There was a knock on the door of the archive. Michael Stevens, one of the prison guards, stood on the threshold. "Detective, we found something while searching Becker's cell. The warden asked me to give it to you." The envelope contained letters. Dozens of letters written in small, neat handwriting on torn sheets of notebook paper. Love letters, passionate confessions, poems, little drawings. Where exactly were they hidden? In a hiding place under the mattress. "We do a standard inspection after a prisoner dies." Farmer carefully spread the letters out on the table. No signature, no addressee's name. But the handwriting, definitely female handwriting. Judy Brooks, the prison psychologist, came to the archives in the evening. She took a long look at the letters, then said quietly, "I've noticed a change in his behavior. He became more confident, like he had some kind of trump card up his sleeve, especially after he was denied parole. Why wasn't it reported to your superiors?" "There was no evidence, just suspicion. A week before he died, he asked for a change in library duty, said he wasn't comfortable working with Miss Gibbs." The detective took up the old case again. Now knowing about the letters, he looked for other details. Here's a character reference from the prison. Model inmate, works at the library, participates in rehabilitation programs. Here are the guard reports. No complaints. It's too perfect. The guard's testimony was compiled piecemeal. No one wanted to talk about co-workers, but slowly, a picture began to emerge. Gibbs? Yeah, she was on library duty a lot. Thomas Green shrugged. Said she loved books. Notice anything unusual about her behavior? She seemed fine, although he hesitated. She's been a little jumpy the last month, always checking logs, paperwork. Stevens, who had found the letters, was more observant. Becker's changed since he started going to the library, more relaxed or something, and Gibbs changed too. They didn't do anything overt, but, you know, when you work here long enough, you start to notice things like that. In one letter, Farmer found a passionate description. "One day we'll be walking together in St. Mark's Square. I imagine holding your hand, watching the pigeons, drinking coffee in a little cafe." He pulled Angela Gibbs's personnel file. The passport was marked, "Never issued." The woman had never been to Venice, but she'd written about it as if she'd seen it with her own eyes. She must have drawn descriptions from Nicola's accounts of his travels. The letters were full of such fantasies, of the future, of freedom, of places where they would be together. But why did Becker keep these dangerous testimonies? And more importantly, what had caused their relationship to end so tragically? The psychologist's office seemed like an island of comfort in the harsh prison interior. Pastel walls, the soft light of a desk lamp, a few indoor plants on the windowsill. Judy Brooks scrutinized the letters spread out on her desk. "She was obsessed with him," the psychologist finally pronounced. "Look at these repeated phrases, these fantasies about the future. Angela created a whole world in her imagination where they're together and free." Farmer pulled surveillance photos from 2 months ago, before the system went down, out of a folder. "This is where they first appear together. Library, end of shift. Classic scenario." Judy shook her head. "An inmate with high intelligence and good manners. A guard who feels special. After all, she's the one he chose, the one he shares his thoughts with. She begins to believe she understands him better than anyone, that she can save him. And him? And he gets the power. A man in love in uniform is the key to little indulgences, extra privileges, perhaps even to something more." The detective tapped his pencil thoughtfully on the desk. But something went wrong. Judging by the latest letters, she was willing to do anything for him, asking him to trust her, promising to help. And then there was a sudden change of mood, anxiety, fear of exposure. The evolution of their relationship could be felt in the letters. First, timid hints, casual touches during the transfer of books. Then, passionate confessions, dreams of a future together. And finally, despair, when everything began to fall apart. "I've been watching her these past weeks," Judy continued. "Classic signs of a person on the verge of a breakdown. Nervousness, mood swings. She's been trying to keep it together as usual, but... Did you talk to her? I tried, but she started avoiding me, and the day before the murder I saw them fighting. Farmer stepped forward. Where? In the hallway outside the library. They didn't know I was there. Nicola was demanding something from her, and she looked cornered. I couldn't hear the words, but her body language spoke volumes. Why didn't you report it to your superiors? About what? That a guard and an inmate got into an argument. That's a common thing in prison. Besides, she paused. Besides, I had no proof of their connection, just suspicions. They traced Angela's route on the day of the murder, morning rounds, ID check, library duty. A brief conversation with Nicola in the hallway. The cameras still had time to capture that before the breakdown, and then the cameras failed. She planned this carefully. Judy pored over her notes of observation. When a person is in love to the point of obsession and then feels betrayed, it's a dangerous combination, especially if that person has power over the object of their passion. But where's the proof? Look at the dates on the visitation log. Angela started changing the entries a week before the murder, preparing the ground, creating a false trail, and Nicola probably realized this and started blackmailing her. Then why keep the letters? They're evidence against her. Maybe he kept them as insurance, or... Judy hesitated. Or it was his final revenge, keeping evidence of their connection, knowing that sooner or later they'd be found. Outside the window of the psychologist's office, the prison floodlights came on, their harsh light delineating the yard into light and dark squares. Somewhere out there, in that tangle of light and shadow, Angela Gibbs was still working, pretending that nothing had happened. The interrogation room seemed too small. Angela Gibbs sat across from Detective Farmer, maintaining her outward composure, but her fingers nervously rubbed the sleeve of her uniform. We found the letters. Farmer laid them out on the table with a fan. In Nicola Becker's cell, under the mattress. She didn't move, only turned slightly pale. Beautiful fantasies about Venice, about St. Mark's Square, about gondolas, about a future together. He arranged the letters by date. The entries in the library visitation log show that you spent far more time there than the service required. I like to read. 2 days before the murder, cameras recorded your conversation with Becker. The last recording before the system went down. He demanded something of you. What was it? Silence. And then there's a strange entry in the laundry log. Ray Harris, who has an ironclad alibi he was in his cell at the time, as confirmed by 3 witnesses. You can't prove I made the entry. We already have. The handwriting examination confirmed it's your handwriting, just like all these letters. Judy Brooks entered the room. Angela jerked as if struck by a blow. Tell me what happened after you were denied parole, the psychologist asked gently. What changed? You don't understand anything, Angela whispered. Then explain it to us. What happened in the laundry room? He threatened to tell his superiors. He had a cell phone with pictures of us on it. Not only would I have lost my job, I would have gone to jail. And that's why you killed him? No, I just wanted to talk, to explain. But he laughed, said I was just a tool to escape, that there were people like me in every prison, lonely, longing for love. Her voice trailed off. The wrench was on the shelf. I don't even remember picking it up. All I remember is his laughter, and then the blood. You threw 5 punches, Farmer said quietly. Did I? I didn't count. And then you forged a log entry to misdirect the investigation. I had to protect myself. From what? From being exposed? Or from realizing you were being used? Angela covered her face with her hands. He promised we'd be together, that we'd start a new life when he got out, and then I realized he was just playing me. I was supposed to help him escape. And you killed him. Yes, she raised her eyes full of tears. I killed him. And you know what? The moment I delivered the final blow, I still loved him. Farmer silently pulled out the handcuffs. The metal clicked coldly on his wrists. Outside the window, a fine rain drizzled, blurring the line between those who guard and those who are guarded. The courtroom was stuffy. Angela Gibbs sat upright, staring blankly in front of her. Her prison guard uniform had been replaced by a gray prison dress, but her posture remained the same, a habit developed over the years to keep her back straight. The prosecutor methodically laid out the facts of the case: forbidden relationship with a prisoner, official misconduct, premeditated murder to conceal a criminal connection. Every word was a heavy stone. One by one, her former colleagues appeared on the witness stand. Michael Stevens spoke of the oddities in her behavior in recent months. Thomas Green about unexplained corrections in the visitation log. Judy Brooks talked about the defendant's psychological state, choosing her words carefully. Between sessions, the guards whispered in the hallway, "Who would have thought it? Gibbs was always so straight." Becker's got a lot of people wrapped around his finger. Remember Jean Miller from the women's ward? She had her eye on him too. Yeah, but at least she didn't kill anybody. Warden Warren Page looked 10 years older. His testimony was stingy, dry. He spoke of Angela's sterling service before this incident, of how meticulously she had performed her duties. Detective Farmer outlined the progress of the investigation: the letters, camera recordings, forged documents, confessions. Behind his words was a story of obsession that led to tragedy. Angela's lawyer based his defense on the emotional instability caused by the victim's manipulation, cited examples of similar cases where inmates used prison staff for their own purposes. He spoke of his client's remorse and her cooperation with the investigation. The jury deliberated briefly, guilty on all counts. The judge announced the verdict: 15 years in prison. Angela didn't even flinch. She was taken to another state, to a maximum security women's prison. No one there knew her story, but from experience they recognized the former guard in the new prisoner. Too distinctive a gait, too straight a back. At the prison where she'd previously served, her story was legendary, a warning to new staff, a reminder of the thin line between duty and sentiment. Detective Farmer would occasionally pull out the case photos, reread the statements. He felt like he'd missed something, some detail that would explain how a man who had dedicated his life to the law could so easily cross it. In Nicola Becker's cell, the new prisoner found another letter behind a panel that had come loose. The last one, unsent. The guards confiscated it, filed it in the case file. But it was never read again. The verdict was in. The end was in sight. Judy Brooks continued to work with the prisoners, but now she talked to the guards more often, watching them more closely, looking for signs that history might repeat itself. The rain still pounded on the barred windows, making no distinction between those on one side of the bars and those on the other.